Great. And I see that it is 1 o'clock, so I will go ahead and welcome everyone on this Friday, April 17th, to our Spring WiLSWorld shorts. Um, Today we have Navigating Unkind Times with Immigrant K-12 Literature, and I am so happy to introduce Kirsten Cappy, who is a former colleague and I consider a friend, um, who is the executive director of I'm Your Neighbor Books. The nonprofit cultivates welcoming behaviors and builds a sense of belonging in communities by increasing access to and engagement with immigrant and new generation children's literature. The nonprofit's Welcoming Library Project received an American School Library Association commendation for creating a culture of welcoming and belonging in U.S. schools. Kirsten was named a Boston Globe Everyday Hero for the founding of the project. With Congolese educator Yaya Yanti and a dozen Central African community members, Kirsten released the award-winning multilingual, picture book Kende, 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 the story of a Congolese family's migration to America's Northeast. Prior and concurrent to founding I'm Your Neighbor Books, Kirsten founded and ran Curious City. This quite small business sought to build a stronger relationship between children and the books created for them by producing free programming guides, classroom activities, videos, and larger literacy projects for schools and libraries. Kirsten, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's so nice to be with everyone. I was just sharing with Andy and Sarah. I think everyone can empathize. I am it's been a long year and a long week. I was my week and my prep for you all was thrown a bit. I am working with an incredible group of people here in Portland, Maine, where I'm based, to try and free a family, a Congolese family who was incarcerated in the Dilley Detention Center for 4 months. We got them, three out of the four of them, home a month ago, and the 19-year-old Olivia is still in Dilley and is really suffering. And yesterday afternoon, the cohort that's been working with her got a call from Miss Rachel, and Miss Rachel wants to take up her case and has written a song for her and all that. So I encourage you, if you are a Miss Rachel fan or you are following child detention issues, that check out her feed. She has some beautiful things about Olivia. And I think as we speak, there is like 1,000 mom march on that detention center. So we can bring in some of that mom energy. I'm going to do that super awkward thing and share my screen while you are here. Oh, desktop, share sound, jip, jip, jip. Center view. All right, is everybody seeing a full screen?
We are.
Beautiful. Okay, let me just adjust my desktop a little bit. So, we're going to dive in. I think that if you are attending this talk, you know some of the situations that our immigrant community is in at the moment and has been for some time. And so I am going to dive right into what we're going to do, how we're going to navigate it, and how books are going to make that happen. So I feel like in these times, immigrant children and adults are facing relentless trauma, fueled by harmful rhetoric and family separation. And also that without intervention, non-immigrant children and adults can absorb the sort of rampant anti-immigrant rhetoric and resort to bias and bullying. It is not out of your, I know you feel this in your heart and in your work. Um, Books help. Um, Engagement specifically with immigrant and new generation K through 12 literature, and we define that as refugees, asylees, the first generation and second generation to be born in a new place is how we define new generation. So engagement with immigrant and new generation K through 12 literature can support both immigrant and non-immigrant community members in rewriting our collective future. At the center of the work for I'm Your Neighbor books has been Ernesto Cisneros' middle grade novels, Efrén Divided and Efrén Dividido. Um, in the book, Efron's mother is taken by ICE, and Efrén has to not only take on his siblings' care, but hide the trauma of his family situation to protect his father's immigration status. This kind of role reversal in children experiencing family separation or immigration related stress is often described in research as parentsification. Um, Also, simply an increase in anxiety, hypervigilance, and academic disengagement. Something I'm sure you see in your students, your patrons, and even in the physical absence of your patrons in your spaces. Ephraim's only sanctuary in the novel is after his younger siblings have been put to bed. His father is working nights. He puts his siblings to bed. He crawls into an unfilled bathtub with The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. When Sandra was presented with a copy of Efrén Divided, in which her own novel reduced Efron's isolation, Sandra Cisneros wrote, "We need books to break open our hearts so that we might feel more deeply, so that we might be more human in these unkind times." I think, like many of you, I felt quite lost in the beginning of 2025. And I think this was the quote that transformed things for me. It was lost, stuck as a blurb on the back of the paperback edition of the book. I had never read it, although I had read the book. Um, and it just became a revelation for me, sort of a light for me in those first dark days of 2025. So I'm Your Neighbor Books was galvanized and founded as a nonprofit during another dark time. It was a time when a presidential candidate was uttering racist depictions of the Mexican American community and maligning the entire Muslim-led nations, their inhabitants, and their resettled communities in America. This is a photo from a 2017, March 2017 rally in Portland, Maine, where I'm based. And it was a pro-immigration rally protesting the president's Muslim ban. I turned around and looked at this young woman and her sign and just, I think we always know this as people, as individuals that work with young people, that children are brilliant. But there are those times when they do something and you are just blown over. And I was standing in that crowd with an author some of you may recognize, Anne Sibley O'Brien, who has been publishing multicultural picture books and novels since the 1990s. She was on one side of me, and Kate Cutco, who is a public librarian here in the state of Maine, was on the other side of me. And um, Kate grabbed my arm and said, "We need to do more. I'm going to be at your house tomorrow at 8:45. I'll bring scones. You bring the ideas." So we had for a couple of years been blogging about um, the emerging genre of immigrant and new generation children's literature. We had started that blog in 2012. We were using those books in the Portland, Maine community and in schools to have conversations about immigration very informally. And we decided if we decided over those plates of scones, that if we really believe that books could make a difference and that books could change the narrative about immigrant families, it was a time to find a pathway for those picture books to be shared in new and unlikely places. And what we sketched out that day was something we called the Welcoming Library. It was all designed on the tight little wonderful space of interlibrary loan crates. So the whole program we decided had to filter in those crates so that we could use the free transportation between public libraries to start to share a conversation on immigration. In those crates were 30 picture books showing the diversity of the immigrant community and a pop-up display unit. So one crate holds a unit, one holds the books, because we didn't want a pile of books to arrive in a public library or a school library in a community center and have them lost. We wanted to deliver a multilingual message and the invitation to read to welcome and read to belong. The real cornerstone of that project then in 2017 and now is the discussion questions that I write in conjunction with the author, the illustrator, and community members for whom this book represents. Those are done as giant stickers and go in the back of the book and ask us as a reader to see ourselves in the story and to explore some cultural competencies and where the book made us hurt, think, made us confused, made us wonder what's next for the participants, and a bit more on those later. That was we released the first one in the end of 2017 with a $100 state library grant. And it got driven around the state in these crates on interlibrary loan vans. And one led to another and to another and to another. It was talked about in New Hampshire. It moved to New Hampshire. It moved to Massachusetts. And over a period of 3 years, they moved from Maine to California and up into Canada. These units that you see, right, in these crates now tour from over 500 locations in the United States. And we'll talk about how you can get access to them for free. We then got asked to build larger collections in public and school libraries, and librarians watched their circulation on these books go through the roof because they were all brought together as a new and emerging cultural genre. And we ended up designing, and this is me at my top library nerd capacity, working with a group of young designers here in the state to design our own library cart. It has Read to Welcome engraved on one side, Read to Belong on the other, and holds 90 to 150 picture books, novels, and graphic novels. And this is something that we place in schools, libraries, colleges, community centers all over the country. Um, During these years, so let's say like we're 2017 to 23, we were also and still are working really closely with the immigrant community here in Portland, Maine. We are a refugee resettlement city. We are very much an African city. And this program is really founded for love of the Somali community who started resettling here in 2000. We also always maintained our eyes on the country, our eyes on the world. And when we felt like an immigrant community was in duress, we would meet that moment with books. The books on the left, we're going to the Half Moon community in California after there was a shooting in the migrant community there. Um, the beautiful picture on the right was an event that we held with books after a group of white supremacists walked through a park frequented by Somali American families. Um, they walked through that park with racist signage, and we did an event celebrating that community after. So these are the kinds of things that we were doing, all driven by this mission that we cultivate welcoming behaviors and build a sense of belonging in all our communities by increasing access to and engagement with immigrant and new generation literature. So I went into this new administration thinking, well, we've come a long way since 2017. We went from those 30 books that got kicked around in the state of Maine for a year and a half as a pilot project to having 40,000 books in circulation across the US. I felt like we had done a small part to prepare us communities for what came next. But what came next was, I think, worse than we could have imagined. So how did we think about welcoming belonging, that mission with the return and I think the intensification of unkind times? And what can we offer you to navigate these times? Our first navigation was leaning into rapid response, finding ways to minimize the harm being done to immigrant children. Research shows that reading about characters who experience injustice and resilience can reduce feelings of isolation. As the 26th semester opened, ICE raids led to a level of absenteeism that hadn't been seen since COVID-19. And educators and organizations delivered books, many featuring a family member coping with detention or deportation, to students' homes to counter fear and seclusion. About this time last year, I posted, it wasn't this photo. I posted a photo on Instagram of a package of books that I was sending to an Afghan family. The father's status had just been changed and he had been taken into detention by ICE. It was very early on. The Afghan community was one of the first ones DHS went after. I posted a picture on that and shared, obviously not the family's identity, um, but the situation, and that these were a particular group of books that I had sent to this family of seven. I think you will love this. I got a call from a school librarian who had been following us on social media since 2018, had never engaged with us, had never donated to us, and had just, um, her parents had just passed away, and she sent us a check for $5,000 and said, whatever you did for that family, please don't stop. And that's when we formed something called Sanctuary Stories. And that was a commitment to say yes to any teacher, librarian who alerted us about a family who could use a book that was a sanctuary, a bit of peace and respite from what's going on. We create individual curated boxes for children. I put this QR code up because while you got access to all of this later, this QR code will bring you to the page where you can request books for a family. We have also, while our supplies and funding lasts, have extended that to classrooms. And we've also heard from school and public librarians whose budgets are frozen, but really want books that feature detention and deportation. So our packages include books that feature the experience of the family affected, but also balance that out with books that also celebrate community, joy, and resilience. Silly graphic novels. I've given away, I love Mexikid. I love that book, makes me laugh so much. And that goes in almost every package. Um, So to date, um, this number, I wish this number had another zero on it, but I'm proud to say that we have done that 2,338 times. Um, and that librarian came back to us with another $5,000 and then another $5,000. So I just want to honor her, who shall not be named, and she's made a huge difference in reducing trauma in families suffering from separation. So I'd like to just start exploring while we have time, exploring some of the books that have really had an impact on families in this time. Because I think we have to be careful about the books that we choose in these times. Um, Again, I like to balance both an acknowledgement of the trauma to show and to provide books that show that there's hope in family, that there's hope in building community, that there's hope in future. You may very well know this book, Terry Castillas Jennings' Little House of Hope. La Casita de Esperanza is about a Cuban family that has fled government persecution and detention. And this is also Terry's story. Her father was detained by his government in Cuba. um, he was released, expected to be reincarcerated, and they fled. They fled to Florida. And in this book, as the family begins to recover in their small little rented house, their house of hope, the family in turn welcomes other immigrants into their casita with incredible generosity and joy. Now, racist falsehoods about immigrants used to justify unjust immigration enforcement increases the emotional burden on immigrant students. So even if immigrant students are not directly affected by immigration policy, um, the words that are being used and the dehumanization that is being used to justify those policies are absolutely affecting our communities. And books like Little House of Hope and other narrative literature can function as a form of emotional regulation during periods of prolonged fear and uncertainty. And while all books and stories hold something for us, I feel that culturally aligned stories reinforce the strength and joy of a child's community and becomes a sanctuary or a place to rest, remember, and restore. And this is where our welcoming and belonging mission comes into play now. Immigrant and New Generation K through 12 literature like this can also step in to dissuade non-immigrant children and adults from believing racist falsehoods about their immigrant classmates or community members, and to deaccelerate the development of culturally based bias or bullying. I'm glad we know this is true. We're finally seeing some of the research that shows that this is true. And this book, oh my, this incredible book, it is from Annick Press um, in Canada. If you haven't seen it, it does some things that no other picture book has done. So it opens in the joy of a family, an abuelita and her granddaughter. They have a joyful, silly life inside their apartment, which is where the book starts. Um, but when they move out into the community, you see Omarita, the girl, you see her face change, right? From here to here. Um, she is taking in people's reactions to the way her grandmother looks, the way she dresses, and the beautiful accent of her speech. And we get to this point in the book where they board the bus. Abuelita is struggling to find her change. She's a little unsteady on her feet. So she goes and sits down to dig through her purse. And the bus driver yells at them and approaches them and says, "I won't start this bus until you pay." He's shouting, "You people are always trying to get away with something. Do you understand me? You have to pay." This, um, the rest of the people on the bus are silent, and this is obviously a very scary moment for the girl, and a piece of community that the grandmother never wanted her granddaughter to see. What is unique about this book is not only is there this attack of them, but the rest of the book plays with, oh, that's a terrible way to say it. The rest of the book explores how long it takes to actually recover from something like this. And the author, Leonardo Corzanza, said she wrote the book because these things happened to her. They happened to her grandmother when she was a child, and she wanted kids to understand. She wanted to address this in a picture book because she said she always thought it was her fault, and that if she had behaved differently, people would have behaved differently to her. Um, there was a great article called Children's Books About Immigrants and Refugees. It was a study on the impact of reading attitudes. And it shared that multicultural children's books can provide students with text for critical examination of contemporary issues in education, i.e., immigration, and social justice. Additionally, that literature can promote a response to crisis and promote action related to those things experienced either personally or vicariously. And that response to crisis with action is really essential for our kids and for the future of the nation. So being able to even experience this vicariously through these characters can have a huge impact on our kids. And so I want to return to the discussion questions that are created for the book. Um, they have those social emotional learning questions, right? Those the first one in the back of this book reads, inside their home, the girl and her abuelita can be silly. Who can you be silly with, right? Just asking kids to see themselves. But we also try and take an opportunity with most of the questions to really help guide a conversation. Um, Not define it, not script it, um, but give you the words, if you choose, to go deeper with a book. And this is a long, long question, and I'm gonna read it to you. It opens with racism is all around us. For some of us, it's hard to see. For some of us, it is easy to see and feel. Let's see if we can all see it and feel it in this book. One way racism shows itself is when a person says or believes something untrue about someone else because of their race or culture. Let's look at what the bus driver says to Abuelita. You people are always trying to get away with something. What two words in this sentence tell us the bus driver is placing Abuelita in a larger group of people? Whether he is grouping Abuelita with people with glasses, people whose first language is not English, or Latinx, Latin people, the bus driver is not seeing Abuelita as a person. Instead, he's seeing her only as a member of a larger group. The group may be real, but what he says about the group is not. His connection between Abuelita's groups and bad behavior, trying to get away with something, is not true, and it's racist. Do you see it? Do you feel it? Has anyone ever blamed you or accused you of something you did not do? Okay. It's hard not to see your faces. That is the hard thing about webinars is missing some of that dialogue. So I'm going to run quickly through some other books that both work to rebuild belonging for immigrant children, but also deliver truths to other children. Those I wish you knew, those truths that we wish they knew. I wish you knew is based on um, an activity that classroom teachers will do in elementary schools where they invite their students to complete the sentence, I wish you knew, and leave that anonymously in a box for the teacher. Of course, it's not anonymous because every teacher knows their children. Um, but this book uses that to explore deportation. But interestingly enough, deportation is the word is not ever used in the book. So again, I'm going to go into a bit of a long piece, but I want you to see the really careful dance, I hope, that we are doing that will help you have some of these conversations. So in the back of the book, we have added this. In the sunflower garden, Estrella's father is telling her gently that he's being deported. What he actually says in the book is, Estrella, that's her name. I'm doing this from memory. I have to go, and I will be back one day to see the sunflowers bloom. And these are sunflowers that he has helped all the students plant on the school playground. In the sunflower garden, Estrella's father is telling her gently that he is being deported. Deportation is when our government takes a person who lives in your home or neighborhood and forces that person to return to the country where they were born. Why? It is the law that people like Estrella's father must get permission to enter and stay in this country. If they do not get permission, they are breaking the law. Breaking that law can sometimes lead to deportation. Why would our father break a law? First, he may not have been safe or may not have had enough money to feed his children in the country where he was born. Second, permission to enter and stay in the US is very, very, very hard to get. Her father did not want to break the law, but he did want to be able to work and raise his children in a safe place with a school where children could make wishes and plant sunflowers. Some people believe that breaking this permission law is very serious and push for deportation. Many people, even the ones that make the laws or enforce the laws, feel that breaking that permission law should not be seriously punished. Those people believe that fathers and mothers can be forgiven for wanting to protect their children. And still others believe that the permission laws should be easier, so fathers are always there to watch the school sunflowers bloom. One of the greatest things about this country is that laws can be changed and that anyone, even children, can ask for change. Would you ask for change? What would you like changed? A mouthful, but very, very carefully vetted with school psychologists and people in the Latin community. This is a really, really interesting book that on the face, well, let me begin again. If you don't know this book, it profiles 13 different students in a classroom. The question has been put out to the classroom, what does it mean to be an American? And each child starts with, I'm an American because I believe in. And those are things like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all of our common US values. It then goes on to describe a little bit about their community, maybe one way in which their community has not been able to always be a part of the American conversation, the American experience, and what that community is now doing to uphold that value. It is a really, really strong title that does white migration, everything from Ellis Island to the Venezuelan community that came in within the last 2 years. I'm Your Neighbor Books also tries to support you with hands-on activities. And this one that I did with the author Darshana is one of my favorite. First of all, because it harkens back to our childhood. I don't know if anybody recognizes that template on the right. That is in fact a cootie catcher, or better named in this generation, a fortune teller. The guide walks you through creating a conversation starter by, if you can imagine a folded fortune teller, the outside 4 squares, one writes their identities, and in the 8 open spaces underneath, you write your values, what you believe in, just like the kids in the book. And then under that, you have a place to write an action that you've done or you could do to uphold those values. And then the guide walks you through how you can use that paper craft with all of that personal information on it, to have a conversation with someone else about what identities and values you share or you're curious about, and how together you can do a project to uphold those values. We've done it from fourth graders up to 80-year-olds, and it is this incredible way to have cross-cultural conversations. Again, you'll get access to all of this, but if you scan that or go to the I'm Your Neighbor Books page on our site, you can find it. I am going to skip over this one, but absolutely an education for all of us about the connection between, and this is true, there was a Japanese internment camp in Oklahoma that is now being used for family detention. And in an amazing, powerful reverso poem, the author and illustrator connects across time how this country vilifies families of color. This is all part of a campaign that Ernesto Cisneros and I are running called Books for Unkind Times. You can follow us on Instagram. We post them, a couple of them a week. You can also see the evolving book list at this particular link. And we'll get back to Ernesto in a minute. I'm Your Neighbor Books always offers you a whole degree of free tools. So this collection that we looked at before, this traveling collection, is something that you can borrow from us for free. We ship to you via UPS. We send you tags to ship them back. And just checking my time. Are we good? We're good. Yes. And they are all paid for by this incredible human being. Newbery Honored winning Philip Hose pays for those to go out to you as a loan for free. There is also a professional development that has been created that aligns with that particular collection of picture books. This was created in the state of Maine. It is a 5-hour free online privacy protected professional development that uses the characters in those picture books to explore SEL and how people of all identities need to be in touch with racial and cultural differences. This was done with immigrant community members, educators, administrators, superintendents. There are 17 different voices, and all but 3 of those identify as immigrant. And you can borrow that collection of books from us at any time to do the PD. So that is the Pine Project. I couldn't stand, I did it with the Maine Department of Education. I hated that they chose a name that nobody would understood, but in these times, people are like, oh, a pine project, great, go cut a tree, whatever you'd like to do, go. So it's turned out to be a boon. Know that we have an ever-evolving database that's free and open to you, where you can explore K-12 books about individual immigrant communities and find books with over 100 cross-cultural themes. And that is available at imyourneighborbooks.org for you to explore. Please sign up for our newsletter, because we are we do book giveaways constantly. And also know that we do story walks. So my book, which is in 7 different languages, is now a free downloadable story walk for you to print locally. And it is a story walk where you can scan QR codes and hear it in 5 different languages. And know that we can work with your district. We have grant documents so that you can bring collections, Immigrant New Generation collections, into your spaces and work with us on those. I want to close. Sorry for that rushed ending, I'd like to close with a video message from Ernesto Cisneros, and then we'll sign off. We'll sign out of here and have a conversation.
Hola amigos, my name is Ernesto Cisneros. I'm the author of Efrén Divided. I'd like to take a moment to speak to everyone who's feeling unsettled, worried, or unsure about what's happening in our neighborhoods. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of images and headlines that can make the world seem kind of scary. You know, when you see people who look and sound like you being targeted and treated unfairly, it can make you wonder, am I safe? Does my family matter? Do I belong here? These are big questions. And if you're carrying them, I want you to know you're not weak for feeling this way. You're paying attention. You're human. Scratch that. You are more than just that. You're among the best people in the world. Some of you have been directly impacted by what's happening. Others haven't. But still, you feel the tension in your homes, in your schools, and in your communities. Fear doesn't wait for permission. It shows up in whispers, in worried looks, in the things adults don't always say out loud. So let me say this clearly for everyone who needs to hear it. You belong. You belong in your classroom. You belong in your neighborhood. You belong in this country and in this world. No law, no policy, no loud voice gets to take that away. You are fine to feel what you feel. Confusion, fear, anger, sadness, even numbness. These are all human responses to uncertainty. There's no shame in feeling them. I wrote Efrén Divided because stories help us remember who we are when things get confusing. Stories remind us that behind every headline is a human being. Behind every policy is a family. Behind every statistic is a child with dreams, fears, and a future that deserves care. No matter where you come from, what language you speak at home, or how your family was formed, your story matters, and it's not finished. This moment does not get to decide whose story is worth telling. If you're feeling scared right now, please remember this. There are people standing with you, teachers, authors, neighbors, friends, strangers who believe in you and who will keep showing up even when it's hard. I'm one of them. I believe in your right to be safe. I believe in your future. And I believe that kindness, empathy, and courage, especially yours, are stronger than fear. You are seen, you are valued, and you're not facing this alone. You are not forgotten, and you are not without hope. I, as well as the majority of the entire country, stand with you. Always. So please remember our ancestors' most powerful words. Quisieron enterrarnos, pero no sabían que éramos semillas. They wanted to bury us, but what they didn't realize is that we were seeds. Your friend, Ernesto Cisneros. In solidarity.
Oof, that makes me cry every time. So again, I apologize for that little bit of a rushed ending, but I want to give us some time to have a conversation. And I will open up the chat. Sarah, Andy, how do you want to do this? Do you want raised hands? How do you want? Oh, yep.
Yep, people can just unmute or they can use the chat, and Andy and I are monitoring that. I think everybody's taking a moment to to compose after Ernesto's message. Amy says thank you. She wants to thank you for your work.
I want to thank you for yours. hard being out there every day in library and school spaces, trying to answer all these questions. I want to share that again, in follow-up materials I'll send you. So that video is available to you any way you want it. It's a YouTube. There's also a vertical for social media. Ernesto and I have let it, there's no permissions needed. You can also access a file to make with a QR code to make that into a bookmark. We now have a bookmark that goes into every book that we send out to families, which has a QR code that goes to that video, because it is all the things we wanted to, it's all the things that he wanted to say. And I think it's beautifully done.
Do you see the question from Molly?
Do you work in a library system with DEI officers? Molly, come on live and tell me a little bit more about what you mean. I don't know what DEI officers are, although I do know what DEI is.
Can you hear me okay?
Hmm?
Hello?
Yep, we can
Yes,
hear you.
we can hear you.
Thank you. So I currently work in a library system without a DEI officer. I had worked in the past in libraries that have DEI officers, and I'm just wondering, the diversity, equity, inclusion, what are you doing to, break down the barriers for library staff that have gone through some of this experience? I'm a member of several marginalized communities and have been a librarian for a number of years, but I'm finding that the longer I'm in the library world, the less true diversity, equity, and inclusion and activism that, had been going strong in 2020. It's now tapered to like nothing now.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right. And it's an interesting time to be asking this question, right? I remember, there is a way, Molly, in which, and I hate this fact, but I work with this fact, that talking about race and culture within the context of immigration literature has, up until the last year, been easier to slide into conversations where there is not a DEI officer or there's not equity conversations happening. People will find a way to talk about a Haitian picture book when they would not talk about the Black experience here in the United States. And it's one of the things that the Pine Project, that professional development, which is for everyone, people working in classrooms, people working in libraries, it is a way in which we have really tried to ramp up that connection where we can talk about Blackness and anti-Blackness in a way that we were being honest about in 2020 and has just sort of slid away now, right? I know I hear you that you're experiencing that. But we make sure that we're having those conversations and we're making sure that that is open access so no one has to, so individuals can explore that work in private. We even will send materials, the books to your home. So that's that doesn't completely answer your question, but I would say as an organization and in our materials, we continue to be as honest, as maybe truthful is a better word. We are as truthful as we possibly can be. And I will also admit we've had a recent staff turnover and some board turnover because being honest, completely honest and truthful right now, um, is not entirely safe. And but as the EDN founder, you know, I'm not a plural, but together several of us made the decision there was no way in hell we were going to be quiet. And this is an anti-DEI environment still. I will share that we have been on this incredible growth, right? With welcoming libraries all across the country. And those welcoming libraries fell 83% last year, because of what's happening. So that doesn't quite answer your question, but I'm going to keep thinking about it. I think Matt has his hand up.
Yes, hello. I'm a youth services librarian from North Lake, Wisconsin, and kind of going off of what we just talked about. This is a pretty deep red area I'm in. I was just wondering if you had any advice on how to promote this to an area that might not be so friendly to the idea of being lighter on immigration.
Um, yeah. Uh, there are a couple of books, right? I'm an American, which I just shared, is an incredibly patriotic book. And I have found it making really strong inroads into spaces. Um, we um, we try and center that these are all of our stories. Um, and we may finally reverse something that we have always relied upon. We do not share books about white migration. The website doesn't, our book list doesn't, our materials don't, but we also know that um, now that there's such an overwhelming change in representation, immigration representation in children's literature has gone up more than 5,000% since 2000. And those stories are not going to get lost if we add white stories, but I think there are particular books, and I think I I really recommend getting I'm an American and going through the materials and see if you can make that programming connection. And the great thing about the loaner collection is that it is there and on site for a month. And it is a great conversation starter. And you get to pack it up at the end, bring it back as many times as you want, but you don't have to purchase. Um, it would be a chance to explore what people really felt in your community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. I think we're almost at the end, at the top of the hour, the end of the hour. And I was remiss in welcoming attendees that are from out of state. We, in the spirit of neighborliness, we shared an invitation to our neighboring state consortia, who helped promote your this webinar, Kirsten. So I think that we have some people from outside of Wisconsin, and welcome to those attendees. And again, we want to thank you so much for not only educating us, inspiring us, humbling us in the very best way, but also just for being and doing what you do. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Andy, do you have any thing that you would like to share to close?
No, I have some email addresses up on the slide here. For those of you who are interested in coming back to this content, we'll share the recording after we get it all processed. If you have questions, you can reach out to us at Wills and we can ferry the question along to Kirsten, or you can reach out to Kirsten directly at the email address on the screen. We also have another WiLSWorld Shorts coming up on Friday, June 12th. That'll feature the Recollection Wisconsin Digitization Initiative. It's been a very successful student internship program in the state, and we'll have some participants and the program manager in a lovely panel discussion to talk about that. So visit that website if you want to register.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for all you're
Thank
doing
you.
out there.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten.